Hello there, and welcome to the Sleepy Facts channel. I'm so glad you found your way here. Maybe you had a long day. Or maybe you're the kind of person who likes falling asleep to bamboo forest mysteries rather than counting sheep. Either way, tonight's journey is for you. Let your mind relax, your breathing slow, and your body grow light as mist settling on mountain slopes. Because tonight, we're exploring pandas, those gentle bears who spend their days in quiet contemplation among the bamboo. We'll drift from their peaceful mountain homes to their patient feeding habits, discovering how these black and white wanderers move through life at their own unhurried pace. Some of what you hear tonight may surprise you, or at least spark curiosity as you drift off. Before we begin, if this helps you unwind, consider liking and subscribing. One sleepy soul at a time. Now, let's begin. The giant panda belongs to the bear family, though it follows a path quite different from its relatives, living a life centered around bamboo forests in the misty mountains of central China. These bears possess the typical bear body plan, with its powerful build and rounded ears. Yet they have adapted to a lifestyle so specialized that they seem to exist in a category all their own. Their distinctive black and white coloring makes them instantly recognizable, with black patches around their eyes, black ears, black legs, and a black band across their shoulders, all set against white fur that covers most of their body. This striking pattern has made them one of the most beloved animals on Earth, their gentle appearance capturing hearts across cultures and generations. They evolved from carnivorous ancestors millions of years ago, gradually shifting their diet toward plants and eventually specializing almost entirely on bamboo, a transformation that required significant changes to their digestive system, teeth, and behavior. The panda walks through bamboo forests like a meditation in motion, each step deliberate, each moment unhurried, embodying a pace of life that seems designed to soothe rather than excite. A giant panda spends between 12 and 16 hours each day eating bamboo. This extended feeding time necessary because bamboo provides relatively little nutrition compared to the effort required to consume it. The panda must eat enormous quantities to meet its energy needs, sometimes consuming up to 85 pounds of bamboo in a single day, their jaws working steadily through stems and leaves with patient persistence. This constant eating shapes their entire daily routine, with feeding sessions interrupted only by rest periods and occasional wandering through their territory. The bamboo itself is tough and fibrous, requiring strong jaws and specialized teeth to break down, which is why pandas have evolved powerful jaw muscles and broad, flat molars, perfect for crushing plant material. Despite eating like an herbivore, the panda's digestive system remains similar to that of carnivorous bears, lacking the multiple stomach chambers or specialized bacteria that help other herbivores extract maximum nutrition from plant matter. This means pandas digest only about 17% of the bamboo they consume, the rest passing through their system relatively unchanged, which explains why they must eat so much just to survive. The panda sits among the bamboo stalks like a patient monk at meditation, methodically stripping leaves and chewing stems, the rhythm of feeding becoming a kind of bamboo-focused trance. The panda's distinctive black and white coloring serves multiple purposes, though scientists continue to study exactly how this pattern evolved and what advantages it provides. The dark eye patches may help pandas recognize each other, as individuals have slightly different patterns that could serve as identification markers when pandas encounter each other in the dense bamboo forests, where visibility is limited. The dark ears might signal aggression or mood to other pandas, though pandas are generally solitary and peaceful, rarely engaging in confrontations that would require such signaling. Some researchers suggest the coloring provides camouflage, the black patches breaking up the panda's outline when seen against shadows in the bamboo forest, while the white fur helps them blend with snow during winter months in their mountain habitat. Others propose that the pattern might warn potential predators that pandas are not easy prey, though adult pandas have few natural enemies due to their size and strength. The truth likely involves a combination of these factors. the panda's coloring emerging from evolutionary pressures that made this particular pattern advantageous for survival in their specific environment. Whatever its purpose, the result is an animal whose appearance radiates gentleness, the soft contrast of black and white creating a visual harmony that seems to invite calm contemplation rather than fear or excitement. Giant pandas possess a unique adaptation called a pseudo-thumb, an enlarged wrist bone covered with a fleshy pad that functions like an opposable thumb, allowing them to grasp bamboo stalks with surprising dexterity. This modified sesamoid bone extends from the side of their paw, working in opposition to their 5 regular fingers, to create a gripping mechanism that lets them hold bamboo while they strip away leaves or bite through tough stems. The pseudo-thumb isn't as flexible as a primate's thumb, but it serves the panda's needs perfectly, having evolved specifically for manipulating bamboo rather than for general grasping. This adaptation shows how evolution can create thumb-like structures. Through different developmental pathways, the panda's solution to the problem of gripping arising from bones that serve completely different purposes in other mammals. Watching a panda eat reveals the effectiveness of this design. Their paws moving with careful precision as they select particular bamboo shoots, position them at the perfect angle, and methodically strip away the outer layers to reach the more nutritious inner portions. The pseudo-thumb allows pandas to feed efficiently despite lacking the hand structure of primates, proving that evolution finds solutions through whatever materials are available, reshaping existing anatomy to meet new challenges. The panda holds bamboo like a treasure, the pseudo-thumb cradling each stalk as though it was something precious rather than the 1,000th piece of bamboo consumed that day. In the wild, giant pandas live solitary lives, each adult maintaining its own territory that it marks with scent glands located around its tail, establishing boundaries that help pandas avoid each other, except during the brief mating season. This solitary lifestyle suits their feeding requirements, as bamboo distribution and density cannot support multiple pandas feeding in the same area for extended periods without depleting the resource. Males have larger territories than females, their ranges sometimes overlapping with the territories of several females, though the pandas themselves rarely meet, even when their territories overlap. The solitary nature extends to their daily activities, with pandas spending most of their time alone, feeding or resting, without the social interactions that characterize many other bear species. They communicate primarily through scent marking and vocalizations, leaving chemical messages on trees and rocks that tell other pandas about their presence, reproductive status, and perhaps individual identity. Despite this solitary lifestyle, pandas are not antisocial in the sense of being aggressive toward each other. They simply prefer to go about their business independently, each panda following its own path through the bamboo forest. The forest holds many pandas, yet each moves through it as though alone, paths crossing without the bears meeting. A society built on absence rather than presence. A giant panda's day follows a rhythm dictated by its digestive system and the poor nutritional quality of its bamboo diet, alternating between extended feeding sessions and rest periods that allow partial digestion before the next meal. After feeding for several hours, a panda will find a comfortable spot to rest, often lying on its back or side in positions that appear remarkably relaxed and comfortable, sometimes even napping in trees where young pandas especially seem to enjoy lounging among branches. These rest periods are essential, giving the panda's digestive system time to process the bamboo it has consumed, though the digestion is inefficient, and the panda will soon need to eat again to maintain its energy levels. The pattern repeats throughout the day and night, pandas being cathameral, meaning they are active during both day and night without strong preference for either, their schedule determined by hunger rather than by the Sunday. This creates a life that appears leisurely to human observers, the panda seemingly doing nothing but eating and resting, moving between these two states with unhurried transitions. There is a meditative quality to this existence. The panda's life stripped down to essentials, freed from the complications that plague more socially complex animals. They sit and eat. They rest and digest. They wake and eat again. A cycle as simple and pure as breathing. The giant panda's fur consists of 2 layers: a coarse outer coat that sheds water and provides protection from the elements, and a dense undercoat that insulates against the cold temperatures of their mountain habitat. This double coat allows pandas to remain comfortable in the cool, misty conditions of bamboo forests at elevations between 5,000 and 10,000 feet, where temperatures can drop significantly, especially during winter months. The white portions of the coat may appear pristine in photographs, but wild pandas often show brownish or yellowish staining on their white fur from soil, vegetation, and the natural oils produced by their skin. The black fur is truly black, created by melanin pigment that gives those patches their dark color, while the white areas result from the absence of pigment, the fur itself being colorless and appearing white as it reflects light. The fur grows continuously, requiring the panda to shed and replace it seasonally. Though the process is gradual rather than dramatic, the coat maintaining its basic appearance throughout the year. Despite the thick coat, pandas do not hibernate, remaining active through winter even when snow covers their forest home, their feeding requirements making dormancy impossible as they must continue eating to survive. The fur provides warmth without weight, insulation without restriction, allowing the panda to move through its forest home comfortable in all seasons. Giant pandas communicate through a vocabulary of 11 distinct vocalizations, each sound serving specific purposes in their largely solitary lives. These calls include bleats, honks, barks, and roars, with different sounds used in different contexts, such as during mating season, when distressed, or when mother pandas communicate with their cubs. The most distinctive sound is perhaps the bleat, a sound somewhat similar to a sheep's call, which pandas use for friendly interactions or to maintain contact when they cannot see each other in dense bamboo. Cubs make squeaking sounds to get their mother's attention, a high-pitched call that ensures the mother knows the cub's location and emotional state. Adult pandas can also produce a chomping sound with their teeth, a behavior that may signal aggression or discomfort, though pandas rarely escalate to actual fighting. The vocalizations carry through bamboo forests, sound waves navigating through dense vegetation to reach intended receivers, creating an acoustic landscape that human visitors rarely perceive, but that forms an important part of panda communication. Scent marking complements vocal communication. Pandas using anal glands to leave chemical messages on prominent features like trees and rocks. These scent marks, conveying information about the individual panda's identity, sex, reproductive status, and perhaps more subtle messages that researchers are still working to decode. The forest thus contains layers of panda communication, sounds and scents flowing through the bamboo, messages written in mediums we can barely detect. The gestation period for giant pandas lasts between 95 and 160 days, though the actual development of the embryo occurs only during the final 45 to 60 days due to delayed implantation. This means that after mating, the fertilized egg floats in the uterus for weeks or months before implanting in the uterine wall and beginning active development, a reproductive strategy that allows the mother's body to prepare for pregnancy and ensures that cubs are born at a time when conditions favor their survival. The variability in gestation length makes it difficult for caretakers in conservation facilities to predict exactly when a panda will give birth, though changes in the mother's behavior and hormone levels provide clues as birth approaches. Panda births typically occur between July and September, timing that allows cubs to grow significantly before facing the challenges of their first winter. The mother prepares by finding a den, often a hollow tree or cave, where she can give birth in privacy and safety, creating a protected space for the extremely vulnerable newborns. The pregnancy itself is not particularly demanding for the mother until the final weeks, the cub or cubs developing rapidly in the last stages before birth, transforming from tiny embryos to fully formed, if alarmingly underdeveloped infants in a matter of weeks. A newborn panda is extraordinarily small compared to its mother, weighing only 3 to 5 ounces at birth, about 1/900th of its mother's weight, making it one of the smallest newborns relative to adult size among placental mammals. The cub is born blind, hairless, and completely helpless, resembling a small pink creature more than the iconic black and white bear it will become. The mother must care for this tiny, vulnerable infant with extreme attention, holding it constantly, keeping it warm with her body heat, and nursing it every few hours, despite the cub being so small that locating it requires careful attention. The dramatic size difference between mother and newborn creates unique challenges. The mother must be extraordinarily gentle to avoid accidentally harming her infant, yet she must also manipulate it enough to nurse it and keep it clean. The cub's black and white markings begin to appear within the first week, dark pigment gradually filling in areas that will become the characteristic black patches, the pattern emerging like a photograph developing slowly over days. The mother rarely leaves her cub during the first weeks of its life, forgoing food and water to remain in the den, providing constant care, a level of maternal dedication that rivals any mammal. This tiny pink being, smaller than a stick of butter, contains the complete blueprint for becoming a giant panda, needing only time, protection, and nourishment to transform into the familiar black and white form. The mother panda faces an additional challenge when she gives birth to twins, which occurs in about half of all panda pregnancies in the wild, as she can typically care for only one cub at a time. The mother chooses the stronger or larger cub and focuses all her attention on it, while the other cub is neglected and usually does not survive. This harsh natural selection occurs because the mother lacks the energy resources to care for two cubs simultaneously. The demands of nursing and protecting even one cub stretching her capabilities to their limits. In captivity, where human caretakers can intervene, both twins can survive through a technique called twin swapping, where staff periodically exchange the cubs, ensuring each spends time with mother, while allowing the mother to believe she is caring for only one cub. This intervention has dramatically improved cub survival rates in breeding programs, allowing both cubs to receive maternal care and nutrition while working within the mother's natural limitations. The mother's inability to care for twins reflects the marginal nature of panda nutrition, their low-energy bamboo diet barely providing enough resources for a mother to raise even a single cub to independence. The forest cannot give enough to nourish two, so the mother makes a choice, investing all her resources in the cub most likely to survive, a decision that seems cruel but reflects the harsh mathematics of survival in an environment where energy is perpetually scarce. A panda cub remains with its mother for about 18 months, learning essential skills for independent survival, including which bamboo species to eat, how to select the most nutritious parts of bamboo plants, and how to navigate their forest habitat. During this extended period, the cub transforms from a helpless infant into a competent young panda, growing from a few ounces to over 100 pounds, developing coordination and strength, and absorbing the knowledge needed to survive alone. The mother is patient with her cub, tolerating play and exploration, while also protecting it from potential dangers, her behavior, balancing the need to let the cub develop independence with the equally important need to keep it safe. Cubs learn by observation and practice, watching their mother feed and then attempting to process bamboo themselves, their early efforts clumsy, but gradually improving with repetition. The mother nurses the cub for 8 to 9 months, supplementing nursing with bamboo as the cub's digestive system matures enough to process plant material, the transition from milk to bamboo happening gradually rather than abruptly. As the cub approaches 18 months of age, the mother's behavior changes. She becomes less tolerant of the cub's presence, particularly if she is entering estrus and preparing to mate again, her hormones signaling that it is time for the cub to leave and establish its own territory. The separation can appear abrupt, the mother, who was previously devoted, suddenly rejecting the cub's attempts to remain close. But this separation is necessary for both pandas, the mother needing to focus on a new reproductive cycle, while the young panda needs to learn true independence. Giant pandas have relatively poor eyesight compared to many other mammals, their vision adapted more for close-range tasks like examining bamboo than for spotting distant objects or detecting movement across their forest environment. This visual limitation matters less than it might for other animals, because pandas primarily use their senses of smell and hearing to navigate their world, relying on scent trails and acoustic cues more than visual information. The black patches around their eyes may help reduce glare from sunlight, similar to the eye black that athletes wear, though this theory remains speculative, and other explanations exist for this distinctive marking. What is certain is that pandas navigate their bamboo forests successfully, despite their limited vision, moving confidently through dense vegetation, where even animals with excellent eyesight would struggle to see clearly. The panda's world is one of scents and sounds more than sights. Chemical messages and acoustic signals carrying more information than visual cues, their perceptual reality quite different from the visually dominated experience that humans use to understand their surroundings. This reliance on non-visual senses helps explain the panda's unhurried pace. They do not need to move quickly to see approaching threats or opportunities, instead moving deliberately through a landscape they understand, through smell and sound, senses that require attention and processing time rather than instant visual recognition. The panda moves through the forest, like someone walking through their own home in darkness. Each step placed with confidence, born from intimate knowledge, rather than from seeing what lies ahead. The bamboo that forms the vast majority of the panda's diet belongs to the grass family, with over 1,000 species of bamboo existing worldwide, though pandas in different regions specialize in different bamboo species. In the Chinling Mountains, pandas feed primarily on umbrella bamboo and kinling bamboo, while in the Min Mountains they consume arrow bamboo and several other species, their diet shifting seasonally as different bamboo species become more or less palatable or nutritious. Bamboo is actually quite a remarkable plant, capable of growing over 3 feet in a single day during its rapid growth phase, making it one of the fastest growing plants on Earth, and producing woody stems that can reach heights of over 100 feet in some species. Despite this rapid growth and abundance, bamboo is not particularly nutritious, containing high amounts of fiber and cellulose that are difficult to digest, along with compounds that can interfere with nutrient absorption. The low nutritional value explains why pandas must consume such enormous quantities. They are essentially eating a food that barely sustains them, extracting minimal nutrition from each bite and compensating through sheer volume. Different parts of the bamboo plant have different nutritional profiles, with shoots being more nutritious than leaves, and leaves being more nutritious than old woody stems. So pandas adjust their feeding behavior based on what is available and what their body needs at different times. During spring, when new shoots emerge, pandas focus almost exclusively on these tender, relatively nutritious shoots, sometimes traveling to different elevations to follow the shoot emergence as it progresses up the mountain slopes with warming temperatures. Giant pandas are surprisingly good climbers despite their bulky appearance, their powerful limbs and strong claws, allowing them to ascend trees with relative ease, particularly when they are young and weigh less. Cubs and juvenile pandas especially seem to enjoy climbing, often retreating to tree branches to rest, play, or perhaps escape potential ground-based threats. Their time in trees serving both practical and seemingly recreational purposes. Adult pandas climb less frequently as they grow larger and heavier, the energy required to lift their considerable mass into trees, making climbing less practical for everyday activities, though they retain the ability and will climb when motivated by circumstance. The trees in bamboo forests are often interspersed with other species, and pandas may use tree climbing to access different food sources or to reach den sites in hollow trees, their arboreal abilities expanding their options beyond what would be available to a purely terrestrial bear. Watching a panda climb reveals surprising grace and agility, their seemingly clumsy body moving with unexpected coordination, powerful shoulders and arms pulling their weight upward while their claws grip bark securely. The image of a panda lounging in a tree, sometimes on its back with legs dangling, suggests a creature comfortable in three-dimensional space, not confined to the ground despite its size. They rest in trees like large, peaceful fruit. Black and white patterns visible against brown bark and green leaves, content to doze above the forest floor. The giant panda's bite force is among the strongest of all carnivores relative to body size, with estimates suggesting they can bite with a force of around 350 pounds per square inch, strength necessary for crushing the tough bamboo stems that form their diet. This powerful bite comes from massive jaw muscles, particularly the temporalis and masseter muscles, which have expanded over evolutionary time to handle the demands of processing bamboo. The muscles so large that they create a more rounded appearance to the panda's head compared to other bears. The skull itself has evolved to support these powerful muscles, with enlarged ridges and robust construction that distribute the forces generated by biting without fracturing or failing under repeated stress. Despite this formidable bite force, pandas are generally peaceful animals, using their jaw strength for eating rather than for aggression. Conflicts between pandas rarely escalating to the point where biting occurs. The powerful jaws close around bamboo with steady pressure, the broad molars crushing stems, the sharp canine teeth present but underutilized, remnants of carnivorous ancestry that no longer serve their original purpose. The panda's mouth is a precision instrument adapted for one specific purpose: processing bamboo efficiently, everything about its structure optimized for this single task, other potential functions abandoned in favor of specialization. Each bite delivers tremendous force with quiet efficiency, the bamboo yielding to pressure that could easily crush much harder materials. Pandas move with a distinctive pigeon-toed walk, their front paws turning slightly inward as they ambulate through their forest home, this unusual gait resulting from their anatomy and perhaps from the rotational stress placed on their wrists by the pseudo-thumb extension. This walk appears rolling and unhurried to human observers, the panda's substantial weight shifting from side to side with each step, their legs working more like pillars than springs, steady support rather than dynamic propulsion. The pace of panda movement matches their energy budget. They conserve energy by moving slowly and deliberately, rarely running or engaging in rapid movement unless absolutely necessary. When pandas do need to move quickly, they can achieve a surprisingly fast gallop, their powerful legs propelling their body forward in a gait that looks almost comical due to their bulk, but which serves its purpose when escape or quick repositioning becomes necessary. Most of the time, however, the panda maintains its characteristic slow walk, covering ground at a pace that allows constant assessment of the environment through scent and sound, stopping frequently to mark territory, to listen, or simply to rest before continuing. The slowness is not laziness but strategy, an energy management approach that matches their low-calorie diet, every unnecessary movement representing calories that must be replaced through additional eating. The panda walks through the forest like water flowing downhill, following the path of least resistance, turning obstacles into gentle curves rather than barriers to overcome. The habitat preferences of giant pandas center on dense bamboo forests at elevations where bamboo grows abundantly and where temperature and moisture conditions remain relatively stable throughout the year. These requirements limit pandas to specific mountain ranges in central China, primarily in Sichuan, Shaanxi, and Gansu provinces, where the geography and climate combine to create suitable conditions. The forests themselves are often shrouded in mist and clouds, the moisture creating a humid environment that both bamboo and pandas thrive in, the air thick with water vapor that drips from leaves and clings to fur. These are old-growth forests, with diverse tree species and a complex understory, not monoculture bamboo plantations, but rich ecosystems where bamboo forms one component among many. The terrain is steep and rugged, mountains rising to high elevations where snow falls in winter, valleys carved by rivers and streams, providing access routes through the otherwise vertical landscape. Pandas navigate this challenging terrain with their slow, deliberate gait, following ridgelines and valleys, their territories encompassing different elevations that provide different bamboo species and different seasonal resources. The forest offers protection and food, dense vegetation that shelters pandas from weather and from the few threats they face. A green maze that humans struggle to navigate, but that pandas know intimately. Mist drifts between trees like thoughts between dreams, the forest existing in perpetual twilight beneath the canopy. A soft-edged world where boundaries blur and distances deceive. Giant pandas are remarkably tolerant of cold temperatures, their thick fur and large body mass providing insulation that allows them to remain comfortable even in snow and freezing conditions. They do not build dens for winter protection as some bears do, instead continuing their normal activities throughout the cold months, feeding on bamboo that remains available even under snow cover. This lack of hibernation distinguishes pandas from many other bear species and reflects the continuous nature of their food source, bamboo being available year-round, unlike the seasonal foods that drive other bears into winter dormancy. The panda's tolerance for cold extends to apparent enjoyment of snow, with captive pandas often displaying playful behavior when snow is present, rolling in it, sliding down snowy slopes, and generally seeming more animated than usual, though whether this represents true enjoyment or simply a response to the stimulating texture and temperature remains open to interpretation. Cold temperatures may actually be more comfortable for pandas than heat, their thick fur designed for mountain climates potentially making them uncomfortable when temperatures rise significantly. In captivity, pandas in warmer climates are provided with air conditioning and ice blocks during summer months, these artificial cooling measures, helping them maintain comfortable body temperatures when natural conditions exceed their preferred range. The panda sits in snow like a natural element of winter landscapes, black and white patterns creating contrast against white snow. At home in conditions that would challenge less adapted creatures, the reproductive biology of giant pandas creates unique challenges for both wild populations and conservation breeding programs. As females are fertile for only 2 or 3 days per year, a remarkably brief window that must be utilized successfully for reproduction to occur. This short estrus period means that males and females must find each other at precisely the right time, coordinating their activities through scent marking and vocalizations that intensify during the spring breeding season. In the wild, multiple males may be attracted to a single female during her estrus, sometimes leading to competition. Though serious fights are uncommon, the males generally assessing each other and determining dominance through displays and vocalizations rather than combat. The female typically mates with multiple males during her brief fertile period, a strategy that may increase the likelihood of fertilization and that ensures genetic diversity by preventing any single male from monopolizing reproduction. In conservation facilities, the brief fertility window creates intense pressure to identify the optimal time for breeding or artificial insemination, with staff monitoring hormone levels and behavior constantly during the breeding season, timing any intervention to coincide with peak fertility. The combination of this brief fertility window with delayed implantation and the long juvenile dependency period means that female pandas can successfully raise only about 5 or 6 offspring in their lifetime, a slow reproductive rate that makes population recovery challenging even when conditions are favorable. The molecular structure of bamboo presents significant digestive challenges for pandas, as the plant contains high levels of cellulose and lignin, complex carbohydrates that most mammals cannot break down efficiently without specialized gut bacteria or multiple stomach chambers. Pandas possess neither of these adaptations, their digestive system remaining relatively simple and carnivore-like despite their herbivorous diet, lacking the fermentation chambers that ruminants use to break down plant matter, and hosting gut bacteria that provide limited assistance in cellulose digestion. This mismatch between diet and digestive capability means that pandas extract only a small fraction of the potential nutrition from the bamboo they consume, most of the plant material passing through their digestive tract relatively unchanged, emerging in the voluminous droppings that pandas produce dozens of times each day. The rapid transit time through the panda's gut, sometimes as short as 5 hours from consumption to excretion, further limits nutrient extraction, the bamboo moving through too quickly for even partial digestion of the tough plant fibers. Despite these limitations, pandas have survived for millions of years on this diet, their evolutionary trajectory leading them into a dietary specialization that seems almost paradoxical. A bear that eats like an herbivore but digests like a carnivore, existing in a biological compromise that works just well enough to sustain the species. The bamboo passes through the panda like water through a sieve, the bear catching what little nutrition it can while the bulk flows past, a system that appears inefficient, yet has proven sufficient across evolutionary timescales. Pandas possess an unusual feature among bears in having vertical slit pupils rather than the round pupils typical of most mammals. This adaptation, perhaps helping them judge distances when climbing or providing some advantage in the variable light conditions of their forest habitat. The structure of their eyes includes a reflective layer called the tapetum lucidum, which enhances night vision by reflecting light back through the retina, giving light-sensitive cells a second chance to capture photons, improving vision in low-light conditions. This feature makes sense for an animal that is active during both day and night, their cathameral activity pattern requiring vision that functions across a wide range of light levels. The panda's eyes, despite their limitations in distance vision, serve their needs adequately for the close-range tasks that dominate their daily activities. Examining bamboo stalks, locating the most nutritious shoots, and navigating through dense vegetation where long-distance sight lines rarely exist. The distinctive black eye patches make the actual eyes less visible, perhaps helping pandas maintain a neutral expression that reduces aggressive signaling, or possibly making the eyes appear larger and more formidable to potential threats, though these remain speculative explanations for a feature that may serve multiple purposes or whose original selective advantage may differ from its current functions. The panda gazes at the world through eyes adapted for twilight, their vision suited to a life lived in the perpetual dimness beneath the forest canopy. The skull of a giant panda shows remarkable adaptations for their bamboo diet, with a broader, more robust structure than other bears, enlarged zygomatic arches that house massive jaw muscles, and a sagittal crest along the top of the skull, providing additional attachment surface for the powerful temporalis muscles. These modifications create a head shape that is more rounded and less elongated than typical bear skulls. The proportions shifted to maximize bite force and to provide the crushing power needed to process tough bamboo stems. The teeth themselves show specialization, with broad, flat molars featuring complex surface patterns of ridges and cusps that help grind bamboo into smaller pieces, while the premolars are also enlarged compared to other bears, creating additional grinding surfaces. The canine teeth remain sharp and pointed, evolutionary holdovers from carnivorous ancestors, though pandas rarely use them for their original predatory purposes. These teeth serving instead to strip bamboo stems, or perhaps as visual threats during the rare aggressive encounters between pandas. The lower jaw is deeper and more robust than in other bears, the mandible strengthened to handle the stresses generated by constant chewing of tough material, the entire skull structure representing an engineering solution to the problem of building a bamboo processing machine within the constraints of bear anatomy. Every curve and ridge of the skull serves the singular purpose of enabling bamboo consumption, form-following function, in a design refined over millions of years. Giant pandas in different mountain ranges have developed slightly different physical characteristics and behaviors, leading scientists to recognize two subspecies based on subtle variations in skull morphology and coloring patterns. The Qinling panda, found in the Qinling Mountains of Shaanxi province, tends to have a smaller skull with relatively larger molars compared to pandas from other regions, and some individuals display unusual brown and white coloring instead of the typical black and white pattern, this variation appearing in roughly 10% of the Qinling population. These brown pandas remain genetically members of the same species, the color variation resulting from a recessive genetic trait that becomes visible when individuals inherit the trait from both parents. The brown, replacing what would normally be black, in the distinctive panda pattern. The Sichuan subspecies, representing the majority of giant pandas, maintains the classic black and white coloring and occupies a larger geographic range, encompassing several mountain ranges in Sichuan and surrounding provinces. These subspecies differences are relatively minor, not affecting the fundamental nature of pandas or creating reproductive barriers between populations, but they demonstrate how geographic isolation and local adaptation can create variation within a species. Populations diverging slightly as they adapt to specific local conditions. The existence of brown pandas in particular fascinates both scientists and the public. These unusual individuals, proving that even within an iconic species known for its distinctive coloring, nature can produce unexpected variations. The brown panda walks through the same forests as its black-marked relatives, living the same bamboo-focused life, but wearing a different color scheme, a reminder that genetics contain possibilities beyond what we typically observe. The daily activity pattern of giant pandas shows no strong preference for day or night. Their feeding schedule driven more by hunger and digestion than by light levels, creating a lifestyle that spans the full 24-hour cycle, without clear demarcation between active and rest periods. This cathmeral activity pattern means pandas may feed during any hour, though they often show slightly increased activity during twilight periods, at dawn and dusk. These transitional times, perhaps offering optimal conditions for feeding while reducing exposure to temperature extremes. The pattern also varies seasonally and individually. Some pandas showing more nocturnal tendencies during warmer months, when nighttime feeding avoids heat stress, while others maintain more diurnal patterns. The flexibility in timing, allowing pandas to adjust their behavior based on conditions, rather than being locked into strict schedules. In captivity, pandas often synchronize their activity patterns, somewhat with human keeper schedules, becoming more active when people are present, though they still maintain their fundamental pattern of alternating feeding and rest, regardless of external schedules. This lack of strong circadian rhythm makes sense for an animal whose food is available constantly and whose main requirement is simply to eat enough to meet energy needs. The absence of predation, pressure, or social obligations, freeing the panda from the temporal constraints that structure many animals' lives. The panda exists in a state of continuous present, each moment holding equal potential for feeding or rest, time flowing without the divisions that humans impose through our clock-watching existence. The conservation status of giant pandas has improved from endangered to vulnerable in recent decades, reflecting successful conservation efforts that have increased both wild populations and protected habitat, though challenges remain, and continued effort is essential to ensure the species' long-term survival. This improvement results from multiple factors, including the establishment of protected reserves covering most remaining panda habitat, laws against poaching and habitat destruction, captive breeding programs that have successfully increased the captive population and begun reintroducing pandas to the wild, and public awareness campaigns that have made the panda a global symbol of conservation. Wild panda populations have increased from an estimated low of around 1,000 individuals in the 1980s to approximately 1,800 individuals in recent surveys, a significant improvement, though still representing a small population vulnerable to habitat loss, disease, or other threats. The protected reserve system has grown to include over 60 reserves specifically designated for panda conservation, these areas preserving not just pandas, but the entire bamboo forest ecosystem, with its diverse plant and animal communities. However, these reserves often exist as isolated fragments, separated by human development, creating the challenge of habitat fragmentation, where panda populations in different reserves cannot easily interbreed, potentially reducing genetic diversity over time. Conservation efforts now focus on creating corridors, connecting isolated reserves, allowing pandas to move between populations. Efforts to restore degraded habitat within the panda's historical range and continued monitoring of wild populations to detect problems before they become critical. The panda's status as a conservation icon has both advantages and disadvantages, bringing attention and resources, while also creating expectations that every panda must be saved, sometimes overshadowing the broader ecosystem conservation that ultimately determines the species' fate. Bamboo flowering presents a unique challenge to panda survival because most bamboo species reproduce synchronously, with all individuals in a region flowering simultaneously and then dying after producing seeds, events that occur at intervals ranging from 15 to over 100 years depending on the species. When the bamboo that pandas depend on flowers and dies, it can take several years for new bamboo to grow from seeds and reach sizes suitable for panda consumption, creating temporary food shortages that can threaten local panda populations. Pandas respond to bamboo die-offs by shifting to other bamboo species in their range, or by traveling to areas where different bamboo species are available, their territories often encompassing multiple bamboo types, specifically as insurance against synchronous flowering events. However, habitat fragmentation can limit pandas' ability to reach alternative bamboo sources, and if multiple bamboo species flower in quick succession, pandas may face prolonged food scarcity. Historical records suggest that bamboo flowering die-offs have caused panda mortality in the past, though the natural cycles of bamboo regeneration and panda recovery have allowed the species to persist through these events across evolutionary time. Conservation efforts now include monitoring bamboo flowering schedules where possible and maintaining bamboo corridors that allow pandas to access alternative food sources during die-off periods, attempting to mitigate a natural challenge that habitat fragmentation has made more dangerous. The bamboo flowers and dies according to schedules written in its genes, cycles that predate human influence, the plants following their own imperative to reproduce regardless of the pandas that depend on them, creating moments of crisis in the otherwise stable relationship between bear and plant. The metabolic rate of giant pandas is remarkably low for a mammal of their size, with measurements showing their daily energy expenditure to be only about 38% of what would be expected for a mammal of equivalent weight, approaching the reduced metabolic rates seen in sloths and koalas. This reduced metabolism helps pandas survive on their low-nutrition bamboo diet, their bodies operating at an energy-saving baseline that makes the limited calories extracted from bamboo sufficient to meet their needs. The low metabolic rate affects multiple aspects of panda biology, including their activity levels, their body temperature, which is lower than typical bears, their slow movement patterns, and their extended rest periods between feeding sessions. This metabolic strategy represents an adaptation as important as their specialized teeth, or pseudo-thumb, the panda's internal physiology adjusting to match the constraints imposed by their diet. Evolution, working not just on anatomy, but on the fundamental processes that sustain life. The reduced energy expenditure also means pandas produce less body heat than would be expected, making them more dependent on their thick fur for temperature regulation, and perhaps contributing to their preference for cool, humid environments where heat dissipation is less challenging. Living at this reduced metabolic pace creates a different subjective experience of time. If consciousness in pandas includes any sense of temporal flow, their slowed physiology perhaps creating a life that feels more spacious, less hurried, each moment stretching longer when processed through a nervous system operating at reduced speed. The panda exists in a state of biological slowness, not laziness, but a fundamental slowing of life's processes, metabolism matched precisely to energy income. Mother pandas demonstrate remarkable gentleness when handling their cubs, despite the dramatic size difference that makes the newborn seem impossibly fragile, the mother's behaviors showing a delicacy that contrasts with her size and strength. She cradles the cub against her chest or abdomen, often using one paw to hold it while eating with the other, the cub nestled in fur and warmth, protected from the world by the mother's massive body. The mother's vocalizations change when interacting with her cub, her normally rare sounds becoming more frequent, soft bleats and chirps that seem designed to soothe and communicate with the infant, creating an acoustic environment of safety. She licks the cub constantly, stimulating its digestion and elimination while keeping it clean. These maternal ministrations essential for the cub's survival during its first weeks, when it cannot even eliminate waste without assistance. The attentiveness required is extraordinary. The mother remaining alert even while resting, positioned to protect the cub from being crushed by her own weight, adjusting her position carefully each time she moves, aware at all times of the tiny life, depending on her constant care. This maternal devotion persists for months, the mother sacrificing her own comfort and nutrition to ensure her cub's survival, a level of investment that reflects the low reproductive rate of pandas and the importance of each cub to the species' continuation. The mother's gentle strength, her ability to be both powerful and tender, represents one of nature's most striking contrasts. A 300-pound bear treating a 3-ounce infant with the care usually reserved for handling butterfly wings. The gut microbiome of giant pandas contains surprisingly little diversity compared to other herbivores, with their intestinal bacteria communities more closely resembling those of carnivores than those of specialized plant eaters. This limited microbial diversity reflects the pandas' relatively recent evolutionary transition to herbivory, their gut communities not having had sufficient time to develop the complex bacterial ecosystems that characterize animals with longer histories of plant eating. Recent research has identified certain bacterial species in panda guts that may assist in breaking down hemicellulose and other plant compounds, suggesting that the microbiome does provide some digestive assistance, though far less than in animals with more developed fermentation-based digestion. The microbial community varies somewhat between seasons and between individual pandas, shifting composition based on the specific bamboo species being consumed and perhaps reflecting individual differences in gut environment or feeding behaviors. Understanding the panda's microbiome has become an important focus of conservation biology, as it may help explain how pandas survive on such a limited diet and could potentially inform efforts to improve panda health in captivity or to support reintroduced pandas as they adapt to wild conditions. The bacteria living within the panda's gut, invisible passengers numbering in the billions, form a hidden dimension of panda biology, a microscopic ecosystem that influences the bear's ability to extract nutrition from bamboo, silent partners in the challenging task of surviving as a herbivorous bear. Pandas mark their territories using scent glands located beneath their tails. These glands producing secretions that pandas apply to trees, rocks, and other prominent features by backing up to the object and pressing their anal region against it. The scent marks contain chemical information that other pandas can interpret, conveying messages about the marker's identity, sex, reproductive status, and possibly social standing or individual health, creating a chemical communication system that operates through time rather than through immediate interaction. Male pandas place scent marks at higher positions than females, often performing handstands against trees to place their marks as high as possible. This behavior, perhaps advertising their size and strength to potential competitors or mates who might encounter the mark later. The frequency of scent marking increases during breeding season, when pandas are advertising their availability and competing for access to mates, the landscape becoming saturated with chemical messages as pandas throughout the region announce their presence and status. These scent marks persist for days or weeks, depending on weather conditions, creating a temporal dimension to communication where pandas receive messages from individuals they may never directly encounter, the chemicals carrying information across time as well as space. The panda backs up to a tree and deposits its signature, a chemical business card left for whoever passes next. Communication reduced to its essentials, presence and identity encoded in molecules rather than expressed through face-to-face interaction. The forest becomes a bulletin board of sorts, trees and rocks holding layers of messages, a chemical archive of who has passed and when. The skeletal structure of pandas shows adaptations beyond their skull modifications, including reinforced limb bones that support their considerable weight, enlarged muscle attachment points that accommodate their powerful musculature, and a robust vertebral column that handles the stresses of their particular lifestyle. The bones themselves are dense and strong, lacking the lightness that might improve agility, but providing the strength needed for a large-bodied animal that climbs occasionally and that generates significant bite forces during feeding. The joints show wear patterns consistent with the specific movements pandas make repeatedly, their wrist joints adapted for the rotation and pressure involved in manipulating bamboo, their hip and shoulder joints designed for climbing as well as terrestrial locomotion. The skeleton serves as both framework and record. The bones, showing through their structure how the animal moves and what forces it regularly encounters. Evolutionary history and individual life history both written in bone. Studying panda skeletons from different time periods and locations reveals how the species has changed over time, gradual shifts in proportions and robustness that reflect adaptation to changing environments and diets, the bones serving as fossil records even in living animals, showing trajectories of change. The panda's skeleton carries its weight through the forest with patient strength, bones bearing loads that would stress lighter structures, engineered through evolution for reliability over speed, for strength over agility, for endurance over performance. Cubs develop rapidly during their first year of life, despite being born in such an underdeveloped state, their growth rate accelerating once nursing becomes established and their body systems begin functioning more independently. The black and white pattern becomes fully visible within a month of birth, transforming the pink infant into a miniature panda, though the proportions differ from adults, with the cub's head appearing relatively larger and its body more compact. The eyes open at around 6 to 8 weeks of age, the cub beginning to see the world that until then existed only as sounds, smells, and tactile sensations, vision adding a new dimension to its growing awareness. By 3 to 4 months, the cub can walk with increasing coordination, its movements clumsy at first but improving rapidly with practice, the forest floor becoming accessible rather than being limited to its mother's embrace. The cub begins sampling bamboo at around 6 months, though it continues nursing for several more months. The dual diet, allowing gradual adaptation of its digestive system to the adult diet, it will eventually depend on exclusively. Throughout this development, the mother provides not just food and protection but also behavioral templates, the cub learning by watching her how to move, how to feed, how to interact with the environment. Social learning, complementing genetic programming to create a functional panda. The transformation from helpless newborn to independent juvenile occurs over 18 months, a gradual unfolding of capabilities that have been present as potential since birth, waiting only for time and nurture to manifest them. The temperature regulation of giant pandas relies heavily on their thick fur coat, their reduced metabolic rate providing less internally generated heat than would be typical for a mammal their size, making external insulation more important. The layered fur traps air close to the skin, this dead air space providing insulation that maintains body temperature even when external temperatures drop significantly. The principles of insulation operating as effectively in biological fur as in manufactured materials. The black portions of the coat absorb more solar radiation than the white portions, creating differential heating that may help pandas manage their temperature through behavioral thermoregulation, positioning themselves so that black or white portions face the sun, depending on whether they need to warm up or avoid additional heat input. During hot weather, pandas seek shade and may reduce activity levels even further than their normal baseline, conserving energy and minimizing heat generation, sometimes submerging in streams or lying on cool earth, to dissipate excess body heat through conduction. The lack of sweat glands over most of their body limits their ability to cool through evaporation, making behavioral thermoregulation and radiative cooling more important for heat management. Pandas pant when overheated, using evaporative cooling from their respiratory surfaces, though this mechanism is less efficient than whole-body sweating and requires them to remain relatively inactive to prevent generating more heat than they can dissipate. The panda's temperature regulation operates within narrow margins. their specialized lifestyle limiting the thermal environments they can tolerate, keeping them bound to cool mountain forests, where temperature extremes rarely challenge their thermoregulatory capabilities. The conservation challenges facing giant pandas extend beyond habitat loss to include climate change, which threatens to alter the distribution and health of bamboo forests, potentially pushing suitable habitat to higher elevations, where less land area is available. Climate models predict that rising temperatures could reduce panda habitat significantly over coming decades, with some projections suggesting losses of over 35% of current habitat within the next 80 years if warming trends continue. These projections account for bamboo's sensitivity to temperature and moisture conditions, the plants requiring specific climate regimes that may shift geographically as the planet warms, potentially moving faster than panda populations can follow, especially given habitat fragmentation that limits movement. Conservation strategies now attempt to incorporate climate projections, identifying areas that will likely remain suitable and prioritizing these for protection, creating corridors that allow pandas to shift their ranges northward or to higher elevations as conditions change. However, these efforts face uncertainty because climate impacts are difficult to predict precisely at local scales, and because bamboo responses to changing conditions may involve complex interactions that models cannot fully capture. The panda, already specialized and vulnerable, faces additional pressure from global changes that operate at scales far beyond their mountain forests, anthropogenic alterations to atmospheric chemistry, manifesting in their lives through shifts in bamboo availability, rising temperatures, and altered precipitation patterns. The future of pandas depends partly on forces completely outside the bamboo forests where they live, their fate tied to global decisions about energy use and emissions, connections invisible but real between choices made in distant cities and the survival of bears in Chinese mountains. Pandas demonstrate individual personalities despite their solitary lifestyles, with individuals showing consistent differences in behavior patterns including boldness, activity levels, and social tolerance that persist across time and situations. Some pandas are more curious and exploratory, investigating novel objects or situations with apparent interest, while others are more cautious, approaching new elements only after extended observation. These personality differences affect how pandas respond to challenges, with bolder individuals perhaps adapting more easily to changes in their environment, while more cautious individuals might avoid risks but also miss opportunities. In captivity, keepers become familiar with individual pandas as personalities, learning which animals prefer more interaction, which are more independent, which are playful, and which are serious. These consistent behavioral tendencies, suggesting that pandas possess something like individual character. The existence of personality in solitary animals raises interesting questions about the evolution and function of personality traits, as many theories about personality assume that individual differences serve social functions, allowing division of labor or niche partitioning within groups. Explanations that seem less applicable to animals that rarely interact with conspecifics. Perhaps personality in pandas simply reflects inevitable variation in how nervous systems develop and function, individual differences emerging as a byproduct of biological systems that cannot be perfectly standardized. Or perhaps even solitary animals benefit from behavioral diversity at the population level. Different personality types, succeeding under different environmental conditions, maintaining genetic variation for behavioral traits. The panda's personality remains largely private, most of its expression occurring alone in bamboo forests where no observer witnesses. Whether this particular bear approaches life with boldness or caution, with playfulness or gravity. The panda's ears, though relatively small compared to other bears, are quite mobile and can swivel independently to track sounds, providing good directional hearing that helps pandas locate sounds in their dense forest environment, where visual location of sound sources is often difficult. This auditory capability is important for detecting potential threats, for monitoring the location of other pandas whose vocalizations carry through the bamboo, and possibly for hearing the subtle sounds that might indicate the presence of particularly good bamboo shoots or other resources worth investigating. The hearing range of pandas includes both the frequencies typical of mammalian hearing and extends into lower frequencies that travel further through dense vegetation, allowing detection of distant sounds that higher frequencies would not penetrate effectively. The internal structure of the ear includes specialized adaptations for sound processing, including an enlarged auditory bulla that may enhance sensitivity to certain frequency ranges, though detailed studies of panda hearing capabilities remain limited compared to research on other sensory systems. In their natural habitat, pandas exist in an acoustic environment rich with information. Sounds of wind moving through bamboo, water flowing in streams, birds and other animals going about their activities, each sound potentially carrying information about the environment or about threats and opportunities. The panda turns its head, ears tracking a distant sound, processing auditory information that remains inaudible to human observers, their perceptual world including acoustic dimensions we can only imagine, frequencies and patterns that matter to them, but that pass unnoticed through our less sensitive ears. The historical range of giant pandas was much larger than their current distribution. Fossil evidence and historical records suggesting they once inhabited lowland areas and extended further east and south than the current populations restricted to 6 isolated mountain ranges. This range contraction occurred primarily over the past several thousand years as human populations expanded and converted lowland areas to agriculture, pushing pandas into the mountainous regions that remained unsuitable for intensive human use. The bears retreating into increasingly fragmented habitats. The lowland habitats that pandas once occupied have been almost entirely transformed. Forests cleared and converted to farms and cities. These areas now supporting human populations in densities that preclude panda residence, even if habitat restoration were attempted. The remaining mountain strongholds preserve the last fragments of the panda's world. Islands of bamboo forest surrounded by human-dominated landscapes, the bears holding on in areas where terrain and climate have prevented complete human takeover. This historical perspective reveals that current panda distribution represents a remnant of former abundance. The species already compressed into a fraction of its historical range before modern conservation began, making the current population and habitat both precious and precarious. The panda persists at the margins, in mountains too steep for easy farming, in forests too remote for convenient logging, their survival depending on the continued existence of places that humans have not yet found profitable enough to completely transform. The mountains hold the last pandas, their peaks and valleys forming a final refuge, where bamboo grows thick, and human presence remains light enough that bears can persist, a geographic last stand that conservation efforts now work to fortify and expand. The relationship between pandas and their bamboo forests represents a form of ecological interdependence, though the connection flows more strongly in one direction, with pandas depending absolutely on bamboo, while bamboo thrives independently of pandas. The bears do not pollinate bamboo or provide essential seed dispersal services. Bamboo reproducing through its synchronous flowering and through vegetative growth that produces new shoots from underground rhizomes, creating clonal stands that spread without requiring animal assistance. However, pandas do influence their forest ecosystem through their feeding activities, creating gaps in bamboo stands that may allow other plant species to establish their browsing, potentially maintaining diversity that would otherwise be reduced if bamboo excluded all competitors. The massive amount of waste pandas produce returns nutrients to the soil rapidly, their inefficient digestion meaning that most of what they eat passes through relatively unchanged, becoming fertilizer that enriches the forest floor and supports decomposer communities. Other animals benefit from panda presence indirectly, foraging in areas where pandas have fed and created disturbed patches that attract insects and expose food sources. The bears serving as ecosystem engineers in small ways, despite not being keystone species in the traditional sense. The panda walks through the forest, taking what it needs, leaving behind gifts of processed bamboo and enriched soil, participating in nutrient cycles without conscious intent, their daily activities, weaving them into ecological relationships they neither understand nor require understanding to fulfill. Captive breeding programs have become increasingly sophisticated over recent decades, learning through trial and error how to maintain pandas in environments artificial to their nature, while encouraging successful reproduction that can supplement wild populations. These programs face numerous challenges, including encouraging natural mating behavior in pandas that may have limited social experience, determining optimal timing for breeding, given the brief fertility window females experience, and raising cubs in ways that preserve behaviors needed for eventual release into the wild. Artificial insemination has become a critical tool, allowing genetic management of the captive population by facilitating breeding between pandas in different facilities without the stress of transport and increasing conception rates in pairs that might not mate naturally. The techniques for artificial insemination required developing methods to collect semen from males, to determine the optimal time in the female's cycle for insemination, and to perform the procedure with success rates approaching or exceeding natural mating. Frozen semen banking allows preservation of genetic diversity from males that might die before producing many offspring, their genetic contribution secured for future generations, even after the individual is gone. The expertise developed through captive breeding extends beyond pandas to other endangered species, techniques refined with pandas, being adapted to help conserve other animals, whose populations have crashed to levels, requiring intensive management. These programs represent a commitment spanning decades, enormous investments of resources and expertise, focused on preventing extinction. Each cub born in captivity, representing success, but also highlighting the species' dependence on human intervention for survival. The process of reintroducing captive-born pandas to the wild requires careful preparation that begins when pandas are cubs, with protocols designed to minimize human contact and to teach pandas skills they would normally learn from their mothers in wild conditions. Caretakers wear panda costumes, sprayed with panda scent and urine to reduce human imprinting, attempting to make the cubs experience their care as coming from pandas rather than from humans, a theatrical approach that seems absurd, but serves important purposes in reducing habituation to human presence. The cubs are given opportunities to practice climbing, to experience natural bamboo forests, and to learn foraging skills in progressively more challenging environments, building the behavioral repertoire they will need to survive independently. Despite these efforts, reintroduction success rates have been mixed, with some released pandas adapting successfully, while others have struggled to survive, some dying from injuries, illness, or conflicts with wild pandas whose territories they entered. Each reintroduction provides learning opportunities, failures informing improvements to preparation protocols, successes validating approaches that can be replicated with future candidates. The goal is not to return all captive pandas to the wild, but rather to supplement wild populations strategically, adding genetic diversity where needed, and restoring populations in habitat that can support them, using the captive population as a reservoir from which wild populations can draw reinforcement. The released panda walks into the forest carrying expectations and training, equipped as well as humans can manage, but facing a world that will test it in ways no captive facility can fully simulate. Its survival depending on whether artificial preparation proves sufficient for natural challenges. The panda's esophagus contains a tough lining that protects against damage from splinters and rough edges of bamboo. This protective adaptation necessary because pandas consume large quantities of material that includes sharp points and rough surfaces, capable of causing tissue damage. The digestive tract itself is relatively short for an herbivore, more similar to carnivore proportions, reflecting the panda's evolutionary history and contributing to the rapid transit time that limits nutrient extraction. The stomach is simple and muscular, capable of holding substantial amounts of bamboo but lacking the complex multi-chambered structure that ruminants use for fermentation-based digestion. Another reminder that pandas approach herbivory with carnivore anatomy. The intestines show some adaptations to plant eating, including slight lengthening compared to purely carnivorous bears, and a mucus lining that may protect against bamboo's abrasive effects, though these modifications remain modest compared to the dramatic digestive specializations seen in animals with longer evolutionary histories of herbivory. The inefficiency of this digestive system drives the panda's constant feeding requirement, the bear needing to consume enormous quantities because it extracts so little from each mouthful, locked in a race to eat faster than its inefficient digestion depletes its energy reserves. The bamboo enters the panda's mouth and begins a journey through a digestive system that will process it inadequately, extracting a fraction of potential nutrition before expelling the rest, the bear's survival depending on volume compensating for inefficiency, quantity making up for quality. Pandas in different seasons show subtle shifts in behavior and physiology. Their activity patterns, feeding preferences, and even their metabolic rates adjusting to changing conditions throughout the year. During spring, when bamboo shoots emerge, pandas focus intensely on these nutritious resources, sometimes traveling considerable distances to reach areas where shoots are most abundant, their diet becoming more energy-rich, and their activity levels potentially increasing slightly as they have more calories available. Summer brings warm temperatures that pandas tolerate less well, their activity becoming more concentrated during cooler portions of the day, their overall energy expenditure potentially dropping as they avoid generating excess heat through movement. Autumn sees pandas feeding heavily on bamboo leaves as shoots become less available, preparing for winter by building body reserves that will help them through the cold months when feeding becomes more challenging. Winter itself presents the greatest challenge, snow covering some bamboo and making feeding more difficult. Temperatures dropping to levels that require pandas to maintain body temperature against significant gradients, their thick fur earning its keep during these months. Throughout these seasonal changes, the fundamental rhythm of feeding and resting persists, the panda's life maintaining its basic structure while adjusting details to match changing conditions, flexibility within constancy, adaptation without transformation. The seasons flow through the mountains and the pandas flow with them, never fighting the changes but adjusting their patterns like water flowing around stones, yielding without breaking, persistent without rigidity. The bamboo forests themselves exist in a state of dynamic equilibrium, different bamboo species occupying different elevations and aspects, some preferring sunny slopes, while others thrive in shaded valleys, creating a mosaic of bamboo habitats across the mountainous terrain. This diversity of bamboo types provides pandas with options, allowing them to shift between species as seasonal availability changes and providing insurance against the synchronous flowering that periodically eliminates single species across wide areas. The forests include other plant species interspersed with bamboo, creating a complex community rather than a bamboo monoculture. Though bamboo dominates the understory in many areas, its dense growth excluding plants that cannot tolerate shade. The tree canopy above the bamboo creates the microclimate conditions that bamboo requires, moderating temperature extremes, maintaining humidity, reducing wind speed, the tall trees serving as protectors that make the bamboo forests possible. Birds and small mammals live within this layered forest structure, some feeding on bamboo seeds when they become available during flowering years, others using bamboo for shelter or nesting, the forest supporting a community whose members interact in ways both obvious and subtle. The panda moves through this green world, brushing past bamboo that brushes past trees that reach toward the sky. Part of a living architecture that builds itself according to rules written in genes and shaped by weather, each element supporting others in a structure that requires no architect, yet possesses undeniable organization. The fur of pandas requires maintenance to remain functional, with pandas spending time grooming themselves, scratching against trees, and rolling in vegetation. These behaviors helping to remove dead hair, distribute skin oils, and potentially address parasites. Unlike many mammals that groom socially, pandas being solitary must handle their own grooming needs, their flexible spine and long reach, allowing them to access most of their body, though some areas remain difficult to reach, leading to occasional matted fur in spots that the panda cannot easily attend to. The grooming behaviors serve not just hygienic purposes, but may also provide sensory stimulation, the act of scratching and rolling, creating tactile experiences that occupy the panda's attention during rest periods between feeding sessions. In captivity, pandas sometimes show increased grooming behaviors that might indicate stress or boredom, these behaviors becoming stereotyped and excessive when pandas lack the environmental complexity and challenges that occupy wild pandas' attention. The condition of a panda's fur provides information about its health and age. Young pandas having cleaner, more uniformly colored coats, while older pandas may show more staining and wear, the fur serving as a visible indicator of the animal's condition and life history. The panda scratches against rough bark, the pressure and movement satisfying some need or instinct. The simple act of grooming connecting the bear to its body, maintaining the boundary between self and environment that the fur represents. The genetic diversity of giant pandas is relatively low compared to many other bear species, a consequence of their small population size, habitat fragmentation, and the population bottlenecks they have experienced as their numbers declined. This reduced genetic diversity raises concerns about the species' long-term viability, as low diversity can reduce populations' ability to adapt to changing conditions, increase the expression of harmful recessive genes, and reduce overall fitness through inbreeding effects. Conservation genetics has become an important tool in panda management, with researchers tracking the genetic relationships between individuals, managing breeding in captivity to maximize genetic diversity, and attempting to maintain gene flow between wild populations through habitat corridors or occasional translocation of individuals. The genetic studies also provide insights into panda evolutionary history, revealing that pandas experienced population expansions and contractions as ice ages came and went, climate changes affecting the distribution and extent of bamboo forests, and consequently influencing panda population sizes. Despite current concerns about low diversity, pandas have survived previous periods of low population size, suggesting they possess some resilience to genetic bottlenecks, though past survival does not guarantee future success, particularly when current threats compound genetic concerns with continued habitat pressure. The genes flow through the population like information through a network, each panda carrying a subset of the species' total genetic variation, the population as a whole, maintaining diversity that no individual possesses, collective inheritance supporting collective survival. The teeth of pandas show wear patterns that reflect their abrasive diet, the constant grinding of tough bamboo, gradually wearing down the enamel surfaces, creating smooth, bowl-shaped depressions on the molars where cusps once stood. This wear accumulation allows estimation of pandas' ages in cases where exact birth dates are unknown. The degree of tooth wear correlating roughly with years of bamboo consumption, though individual variation in diet and chewing patterns creates uncertainty in these age estimates. Unlike some mammals whose teeth grow continuously to compensate for wear, panda teeth do not regenerate, meaning that extremely old pandas may find feeding increasingly difficult, as their teeth wear down to the point where crushing bamboo becomes challenging, this dental deterioration potentially contributing to mortality in elderly individuals. The strong jaw muscles and robust skull structure help pandas maintain effective bite force, even as teeth wear, the power of the bite partially compensating for the reduced effectiveness of worn tooth surfaces. Young pandas with fresh, sharp teeth can process bamboo more efficiently than older pandas with worn teeth. This age-related decline in feeding efficiency, potentially affecting nutritional status and survival in ways that compound other age-related changes. The panda chews through its lifetime, each bite wearing away minute amounts of tooth enamel. The accumulation of millions of bites, gradually transforming sharp cusps into smooth bowls, time made visible in the wearing away of biological structures that served their purpose, bite by bite. The panda's liver and kidneys face challenges from their bamboo diet, these organs processing the various compounds present in bamboo, including cyanogenic glycosides that can release cyanide during digestion, though pandas tolerate these compounds better than most mammals through detoxification mechanisms not fully understood. The liver, particularly, must process the breakdown products of bamboo digestion, neutralizing potentially harmful substances and preparing waste products for excretion, the organ working constantly to maintain the body's chemical balance despite the challenges posed by the unusual diet. The kidneys filter blood and produce urine that contains concentrated waste products, their function essential for maintaining proper fluid and electrolyte balance, given the large water content of bamboo and the dilute nature of nutrients the panda extracts from its food. These organs show no obvious specializations compared to other bears, despite the unique demands of the panda's diet. Another indication that pandas approach herbivory with relatively unmodified carnivore physiology, succeeding through behavior and sheer consumption volume rather than through dramatic physiological adaptation. The organs work in darkness beneath fur and muscle, processing the byproducts of constant bamboo consumption, maintaining internal balance against the flood of barely digestible plant material, keeping the complex chemistry of mammalian metabolism operating within acceptable parameters, despite receiving inputs that seem designed for different digestive systems. The panda's claws are strong and curved, adapted for climbing and for gripping bamboo, their sharpness maintained through regular use against bark and rock, these structures serving multiple purposes in the panda's daily life. Unlike cats whose claws retract, panda claws remain extended, visible as dark points against their black paws, constant presences that factor into every step and every grasp. The claws provide purchase when climbing trees, digging into bark, and holding the panda's weight as it ascends or descends, essential tools for vertical movement that requires secure grips against gravity. They also assist in feeding, helping to hold bamboo stalks steady, while the panda's teeth do the work of stripping and chewing, the claws acting as supports that complement the grasping function of the pseudo-thumb. The claws receive wear from use, but continue growing throughout the panda's life, maintaining their length and sharpness through balance between growth and abrasion, biological structures that self-maintain through simple physical principles. In conflict, which is rare, claws can serve as weapons. Though pandas generally avoid physical confrontation, their size and apparent willingness to defend themselves, usually sufficient to deter potential aggressors without requiring actual combat. The claws curve like dark crescents, hooks that connect panda to tree, to earth, to bamboo, physical extensions of the paw that expand the ways the panda can interact with its world. The sounds of the bamboo forest create an acoustic environment that forms the backdrop to panda life. Wind moving through hollow bamboo stems, producing characteristic sighs and rattles, rain drumming on broad leaves, water flowing in streams that carve the mountain valleys. Within this natural soundscape, panda vocalizations add punctuation, brief sounds that communicate specific messages before silence returns, the forest absorbing sound in the way that dense vegetation softens and mutes, creating an environment where sounds fade quickly, distances compressed by the acoustic properties of thick growth. The pandas themselves move quietly despite their size, their deliberate pace and soft paws, allowing them to travel through undergrowth without creating the crashing and snapping that would announce their presence. Stealth, not for hunting, but simply the natural consequence of unhurried movement through familiar terrain. The acoustic signature of the bamboo forest differs from other forest types, the hollow stems and dense growth creating unique reverberations and absorption patterns, shaping how sounds propagate and fade, influencing what pandas can hear, and from how far, the acoustic environment, as much a part of their habitat as the visual or chemical landscapes. The forest murmurs and sighs, wind song through bamboo that has no melody but creates presence, sound as texture rather than as signal, the acoustic equivalent of fog drifting between trees. The future envisioned for giant pandas by conservation planners includes not just population stability, but population growth that allows recolonization of portions of their historical range, habitat corridors that reconnect isolated populations, and eventually perhaps the removal of human support, as wild populations become self-sustaining at levels that no longer require intensive management. This vision remains aspirational, requiring sustained effort over decades and success in addressing challenges that range from local habitat protection to global climate change, from genetic management to community development that creates economic incentives for conservation. The alternative future, should conservation efforts fail, involves continued population decline, leading eventually to extinction in the wild, with pandas surviving only in captivity, living museums that preserve the species in form but not in ecological function, bears without bamboo forests, individuals without populations. Between these extremes lies a range of possible futures where pandas persist but remain dependent on human management, their territories protected but fragmented, their populations stable but small, their existence secured but diminished, survival guaranteed but wildness compromised. Which future manifests depends on choices made far beyond the mountain forests where pandas currently live, decisions about land use and climate policy and resource allocation that will determine whether the bamboo forests persist and expand or shrink and fragment. The panda sits in the present moment, unconcerned with futures it cannot imagine, eating bamboo because that is what pandas do, but its continued ability to sit and eat depends on human choices that will shape the forests and the climate and the possibilities for life in the mountains of central China. The intelligence of pandas, difficult to measure and compare across species, manifests in ways suited to their lifestyle, showing problem-solving abilities in situations involving food acquisition and spatial navigation, while showing less complexity in social cognition given their solitary nature. In captivity, pandas demonstrate the ability to learn through trial and error, to remember solutions to problems they've encountered before, and to modify their behavior based on consequences, typical mammalian learning abilities, operating within the constraints of their particular sensory and cognitive capabilities. They show curiosity toward novel objects and situations, investigating changes in their environment with apparent interest, though also with the caution typical of many animals. The balance between curiosity and caution, presumably shaped by evolutionary pressures that favored exploring new resources while avoiding unknown dangers. The question of what pandas experience subjectively, whether they possess consciousness in ways comparable to humans or other cognitively complex mammals, remains unanswerable with current scientific methods. Their mental lives a mystery. We can only infer from their behavior and brain structure. They certainly possess awareness of their environment and their own bodies, learn from experience, remember individuals and locations. But whether these capabilities arise from something we would recognize as consciousness, or from more automatic processing that produces similar outcomes without subjective experience, remains unknown. The panda navigates its world successfully, responding appropriately to challenges and opportunities, whether through conscious deliberation or through mechanisms that produce adaptive behavior without requiring conscious thought. The external observer unable to distinguish between these possibilities through behavioral observation alone. The impact of pandas on Chinese culture extends far beyond their role as conservation symbols, with pandas appearing in art, literature, and folklore, their distinctive appearance and gentle nature making them subjects of cultural attention for centuries before modern conservation concerns arose. The word for panda in Chinese consists of characters meaning large and bearcat, reflecting early uncertainty about the animal's taxonomic relationships and its unusual combination of bear size with cat-like features, including the vertical pupils and relatively small ears. Pandas have been given as diplomatic gifts between China and other nations. These diplomatic pandas serving as ambassadors that strengthen international relationships while raising awareness about conservation needs, their presence in foreign zoos, creating connections between Chinese wildlife and international audiences. The commercial value of pandas, as tourist attractions, generates revenue that can support conservation efforts, though the relationship between tourism and conservation success remains complex, with benefits sometimes offset by disturbance and development pressures that tourism creates. Within China, pandas serve as symbols of the nation itself, appearing on currency, in advertising, as mascots for events, their image instantly recognizable and evoking positive associations that make them valuable beyond their biological significance. The living pandas in mountain forests exist separately from these symbolic pandas in human culture. The animals themselves unaware of their fame, going about their bamboo-focused lives while their image circulates globally, representing ideas and values they neither create nor comprehend. The daily water requirements of pandas are met primarily through the moisture content of bamboo, which contains significant water, though pandas will drink from streams when available, and may increase water consumption during warmer weather or when feeding on drier bamboo components. The high water content of bamboo means pandas rarely face dehydration in their natural habitat, where mist and rain keep vegetation, moisture levels high. Their water needs largely satisfied as a byproduct of feeding, rather than requiring separate drinking behavior. The digestive system must handle this large water intake, absorbing needed fluids while excreting excess, the kidneys concentrating urine to retain water when needed, or producing more dilute urine when water is abundant, typical mammalian osmoregulation, operating to maintain fluid balance. The water content of bamboo varies seasonally, and between plant parts, shoots containing more moisture than leaves more than woody stems, this variation affecting the panda's hydration status and potentially influencing feeding choices. Pandas possibly selecting more succulent bamboo components when hydration becomes a concern. The streams flowing through bamboo forests provide reliable water sources throughout most seasons. Their constant flow, supported by mist and rain, that characterize the moist mountain climate, water cycling through the forest as precipitation, stream flow, plant uptake, and evaporation, pandas tapping into this cycle through bamboo consumption and occasional direct drinking. Water flows through the landscape and through the panda, entering as bamboo moisture, circulating as blood and lymph, leaving as urine and moisture in breath, the bear a temporary container in the larger hydrological cycle. The panda's nose contains specialized olfactory structures that provide their excellent sense of smell, this chemical sense serving as perhaps their most important long-distance sense, given their limited vision and the dense vegetation that restricts sight lines in bamboo forests. The wet, black nose, typical of bears, provides a large surface area for capturing scent molecules from the air, while the internal nasal structures include turbinates, bony shelves, covered in olfactory epithelium, that increase the surface area available for scent detection. The vomeronasal organ, located in the roof of the mouth, provides additional chemosensory capability, specialized for detecting pheromones and other chemical signals of reproductive or social significance. This organ connecting to both the mouth and nasal cavity and processing chemical information that influences behavior, particularly during mating season. The brain regions dedicated to processing olfactory information are proportionally large, reflecting the importance of smell in the panda's sensory world. Neural resources allocated to interpreting the complex chemical landscape that the nose continuously samples. Scent provides information that persists longer than sound, and that can encode more information than visual signals in environments where sight is limited, making olfaction ideal for solitary animals that communicate across time and space through chemical messages rather than through face-to-face interaction. The panda's world is rich with scents that convey meaning, chemical gradients and signatures that tell stories about who passed and when, about resources and dangers, about seasons and opportunities, information flowing in molecules rather than in light or sound waves. The protected reserves that preserve panda habitat exist within a political and economic context that influences conservation success, with reserve management requiring cooperation between government agencies, local communities, and international conservation organizations. each bringing different priorities and perspectives to conservation efforts. Local communities living near reserves face restrictions on resource use that can create economic hardship, making community support for conservation dependent on providing alternative livelihoods or compensation for foregone opportunities. Conservation becoming as much a social challenge as a biological one. Tourism provides economic benefits that can offset some costs of conservation. Visitors paying to enter reserves and see pandas generating revenue that supports both conservation programs and local economies. Though tourism must be managed carefully to avoid disturbing pandas or degrading habitat. International funding supports many conservation projects, foreign money supplementing domestic resources. This international interest reflecting the panda's status as a global symbol, but also creating dependencies that can make conservation vulnerable to shifts in international priorities or economic conditions. The reserves themselves require active management, not passive protection, with staff conducting patrols to prevent poaching and illegal logging, monitoring panda populations, maintaining infrastructure, managing human access, and addressing countless issues that arise when attempting to preserve wild populations in landscapes that humans also inhabit and use. The forest exists within boundaries drawn on maps, protected by laws written on paper, its preservation depending on human choices made in offices distant from the bamboo, the panda's survival tied to economics and politics as much as to ecology and biology. The study of panda biology continues revealing new aspects of their physiology and behavior, with research showing that pandas possess taste receptors that have lost their ability to detect sweetness, this loss possibly related to their carnivorous ancestry, or perhaps to their bamboo diet, which contains little sugar that would benefit from sweet taste detection. The discovery that pandas lack functional sweet taste receptors raises questions about what drives their food preferences, how they evaluate bamboo quality without tasting sweetness, that in other herbivores might indicate nutritious young growth. Other sensory systems, particularly smell and possibly texture perception through mouth and tongue, likely provide the information pandas use to select feeding sites and specific bamboo components, their evaluation of food quality happening through alternative sensory channels. Research also continues exploring the metabolic adaptations that allow pandas to survive on their low-energy diet, with studies revealing that pandas reduce energy expenditure through multiple mechanisms, including low basal metabolic rate, reduced activity levels, lower body temperature, and possibly reduced immune function and other physiological processes that consume energy in most mammals. Understanding these adaptations may provide insights applicable to human health and to conservation of other species. The specialized biology of pandas serving as a natural experiment in minimum viable energy budgets. Each new discovery about pandas adds detail to our understanding, while also revealing how much remains unknown, each answer generating new questions, the pandas keeping secrets in their genes and their physiology that decades of research have only begun to illuminate. The bamboo leaves that pandas consume contain silica and other compounds that make them abrasive, contributing to tooth wear but also requiring the tough enamel and powerful jaws that pandas possess to process them effectively. The leaves also contain various secondary compounds that plants produce as defenses against herbivores, though pandas have evolved tolerances for these compounds that would deter or harm less adapted animals. The nutritional content of leaves varies seasonally, young leaves being more nutritious than old leaves, protein content declining as leaves mature and as plants redirect resources from leaf growth to other functions. Pandas presumably select leaves based on characteristics they can perceive, possibly preferring younger leaves when available, though their ability to discriminate quality may be limited by their reduced sense of taste. The sheer volume of leaves a panda must consume to meet its energy needs means that even small improvements in digestive efficiency or feeding selectivity can have significant impacts on energy balance. Selection pressure operating on traits that improve the panda's ability to extract slightly more nutrition from each mouthful, or to identify slightly more nutritious feeding locations. The leaves fall from bamboo stalks, drift through the forest to decompose on the forest floor, or pass through the panda's digestive system to emerge little changed, plant material cycling through the ecosystem in various pathways. Some passing through the bear, most bypassing it entirely. The forest processing its own biomass, with or without panda participation. The moonlight filtering through the bamboo canopy on clear nights creates a landscape of shadows and silver highlights, patterns shifting as wind moves leaves and stems. The nocturnal forest, taking on qualities different from its daytime appearance. Pandas active during these nighttime hours move through this altered landscape, their vision adequate for the low light levels, their navigation depending more on memory and smell than on vision in any case. The nighttime forest holds different dangers and opportunities compared to daylight. Some predators being nocturnal, though few pose threats to adult pandas. Some food resources possibly being more accessible or fresher during night hours. The temperature drops during nights, particularly in the mountains where altitude and clear skies allow rapid radiative cooling. These cooler conditions, perhaps more comfortable for pandas, whose thick fur and low metabolic rate make heat dissipation more challenging than cold tolerance. The panda's decision to be active at any particular time remains mysterious, driven by hunger certainly, but also perhaps by comfort, by habit, by factors we cannot identify because we do not experience the world as pandas experience it. The moonlight catches on black and white fur as the panda moves between shadows, briefly visible and then obscured, a presence more than a form, moving through the night with the same patient deliberation that characterizes all panda movement, regardless of whether the sun shines or the stars wheel overhead. And now, the pandas fade behind your thoughts. We've drifted through 100 quiet truths about these gentle giants, from their mountain bamboo forests to their patient feeding habits, from their distinctive black and white patterns to the slow metabolism that matches their unhurried lives. You are connected to this world. The same patience that allows a panda to spend 16 hours eating bamboo lives in your ability to slow down, to be present, to exist without rushing. The same mountains that shelter pandas exist on the planet you inhabit. The same rain that nourishes bamboo forests falls from clouds that circle the globe you share with these bears. Tonight, as you rest, pandas continue their ancient routines in misty mountain forests, sitting among bamboo stalks, methodically chewing through stems and leaves, resting between feeding sessions, climbing trees to lounge among branches, moving through their territories with deliberate steps. They exist in the present moment, each breath unhurried, each movement purposeful, embodying a way of being that refuses to be rushed. And you are safe, warm, resting in a world full of wonder, a world where bears sit peacefully among bamboo, where life persists at its own pace, where gentleness and strength coexist in black and white patterns moving through green forests. May their patience live in your dreams, their peace in your sleep, their gentle presence carry you softly through the night. If you're still awake, go ahead and watch the next chapter. Sleep well and dream softly. Good night.